Welcome back to the weekly news roundup. We are back to our regular scheduled lineup. We have privacy, security, business, and a little bit of silly news to wrap up the day. Of course, you can catch the show live Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you'd like to catch the live show. See all the comments in and out and all of the back and forth discussions that we actually have inside of our show. But let's go ahead and dive right on into the privacy news today. First up, of course, this is something we've talked about a little bit, and I've actually seen this happen already in America, although not widely reported, and I've seen it on a couple of the true crime stories. In this case, we have a speedster, so a person driving over the speed limit, jailed after Singapore police tapped the GPS and the route data from the car's infotainment system. So, of course, your car, most of your modern cars have these full-fledged GPS systems and the infotainment systems, and it's recording a bunch of data. Now, some of these are tied to the infotainment system, and there was a little bit of a breakout. We covered it in the news a couple months ago when Ford particularly was taking all of this data, collecting it remotely from the car, and then turning around and selling this to the data brokers who were in turn selling it to the insurance companies. So your insurance companies were raising people's rates based on the information that they got from your car. Now, the other way this is done, if you don't have one of those infotainment or you're somehow blocking a perpetually connected internet, cars do have black boxes on them. So when you're looking at that black box, it does it depending on the vehicle. It might take a lot or it might take a little data. It might only record a little bit. And some of the more modern cars, though, they're really collecting a lot of data. They're saving a lot of data. And what police would come in and do is if they would get a warrant, they can plug in a reader onto your ODB port on your car. I think I said that right. And they can grab all of that data. In this case, what happened is a person was suspected of speeding, and so they got a warrant or whatever they do down there in Singapore. However their means was, the police went over and extracted the data from the OBD port, and as they extracted the data from the OBD port, they were able to verify that, yes, the woman was actually the one driving the car based on call logs, text logs, and things like that. They were also able to get the GPS data to prove that she was actually speeding, and then she went to jail for that. Singapore sounds like a bang-up place to be. So there were some questions about how this happened, and they're like, well, what can we do to protect this? And they said, oh, don't worry, only authorized people can do this. You'll get in trouble if you're not authorized. Well, that's hardly comforting to me, knowing that there are such things as corrupt individuals out there in the world. And so just remember that unless we're doing a lot of serious pushback, our cars are going to start collecting a whole lot more data about us than we would probably be comfortable with. And so it does bear some of this pushback. In fact, we're going to see in a story later on, pushback is a good thing. Whether it's us on this channel calling out distros for doing crazy things that cause them to go, maybe we should change that, to guys like Louis Rossmann putting a lot of pressure on groups like Spotify who want to brick perfectly good stuff and say, hey, it's just up to you to go figure out how to dispose of this thing. Pushback works. And we need to raise awareness of things in order to push back against it. And this is exactly what this article is. I have already seen multiple cases of this happening in reality already here in America, where your vehicle's data was used against people in criminal proceedings. So keep that in mind, folks. Google accused of secretly tracking drivers with disabilities. Okay, I am split on the fence on this one. This one deals with Google Analytics embedded in a DMV website in, of all places, California, which is one of the states that has the most comprehensive privacy policy. The problem is Google Analytics does carry with it a lot of issues. Specifically, Google Analytics cannot be used in healthcare environment places on a federal level. So any group that is cramming Google Analytics inside of their website or their products and then saying, hey, use it for healthcare services. I'm looking at you, application, you know what I'm talking about. The FTC, I can't remember if it's the FDA or the FTC, will come after you for that. There were a number of companies that were fined millions of dollars for having Google Analytics on client-facing web portals. So Facebook, Google, TikTok, any of these trackers, any of these data analytics things, if it has access to sensitive data on a person, then it is actually forbidden because it violates HIPAA. Of course, depending on what it's doing, it could violate the education ones as well, but that one hasn't been quite as litigated. However, in this case here, what happened is the DMV, has Google Analytics on their website, and California is forcing more people to use the website for DMV rather than going in. And the DMV website has Google Analytics and collects information about your private medical records as far as having medical restrictions on your license and things like this. So this woman is arguing that the website utilizing Google Analytics is sending data to Google. So she goes and sues Google for this. Now, she can't apparently sue the state entity because it's the state entity, but she's trying to sue Google. Unfortunately, Google turns around and says, hey, it's the website's job to know if they're allowed to use it or not. And that's really where I can agree with Google on this case. Now, Google is wrong that they don't benefit from people using this data. They do. All of that data is used inside of platforms. If it's not Google itself marketing with that data, it is other clients of Google's using that data for marketing. And it's also very possible to de-anonymize somebody based on the machine IDs that they're using now, rather than the old way of looking at IP addresses, because everyone's just given us randomly assigned number. Well, you can click on a randomly assigned number and see a lot of interesting profile information about that number. Like, well, that's just a random number. The problem is if that's tied to an AdSense account, I can also tie that random number to a direct sale on my AdSense platform, in which my direct sale is going to collect personal information like your name and your address, all that kind of stuff. I can now tie an individual person to that. That's very possible to do. Trust me, I've seen the data myself. I have clients that do work with these types of things, and I do manage some of these types of accounts for people. So yes, I have personally seen this data. And so the problem is that the companies oftentimes don't know the limitations, what they are and are not allowed to use, and they're simply outsourcing it to somebody else. The somebody else anymore, it's hard to find just a basic web developer. Everybody wants to be a full-fledged marketer, and every marketer wants all of that data. And so every person that's building a website for somebody else simply crams the analytics data in there, and now Google has the information. So I can agree with both parties in this, because it's a complicated thing when the fact that sometimes it's not the website owner's end decision to embed analytics, but the analytics is still collecting information. Where she'd probably have the better chance is going in and filing a complaint with the California board that manages the California privacy protection policies. That might be the place where you can do it, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Google Analytics is or may be covered under that policy. I don't know. So, however, they're slimy with it in that Google Analytics, in theory, doesn't collect personal data, but in reality, it does. It's just one step removed. And so what they're looking at is where I think they're getting in is they're focusing on the DPPA law. This is dealing directly with data collected by the DMV. Again, the woman would probably have better luck going through the CPPA regulations instead of the DPPA regulations. And so that's where I think the difference is on this article. But it's still fascinating that the DMV is embedding all of these trackers for all these big tech companies and collecting information about whether this individual person happens to be disabled. So that's an interesting one to see what is going on. And on to our more terrifying thing, and I think that's something that should probably be challenged legally. PayPal is now building an ad network leveraging user data and AI for targeted advertising. So effectively, since so many people have this PayPal account, what they're doing now is they are taking all of that data that they have on all of these individual people, and understand they have everything about you because they're covered under this know your customer rule because they're dealing with money. So they absolutely know everything about people on the direct personal end, and they know what all of the purchases are. Now they are creating their own ad network to compete with Google et al. And creating this network. Well, the question becomes, did people sign up for PayPal with an understanding that their data would be used in this manner? And so it begs a couple of interesting questions on the legal front. I think somebody needs to challenge this legally. But at the same time, this is a terrifying amount of data that PayPal collects. And the fact that they are a company that has so much access to the most sensitive personal data. You have to understand, they know everybody's full names, tax ID numbers, and banking numbers, and all their purchases. They have too much data to do something like this. We need government regulators involved in this one. It's too much of a conflict of interest. And of course, what are they going to be using it for? Target consumers with ads displayed on other websites and connected TV sets. Oh, that sounds fun. So there you have it, guys. PayPal is utilizing its resources to do crazy and evil things. Well, let's have a look over at our security news next. First up, 2.8 million U.S. folks learn their personal information was swiped months ago on the SavRx IT heist. So this is a company that manages 10 million workers and families via employers or unions. So I have a problem with the way that some of these businesses are working in this front, in that you're doing work with this individual company, and then that company is collecting data and then sending it to somebody else. So as a very good, very clear example of this, there was a company I mentioned before. I worked with an ed tech startup. Well, the ed tech startup started, they outsourced, after I was there for about a year or two, they outsourced their contractor hour logging to a third-party company. That third-party company then created some account at Charles Schwab, which I want nothing to do with ever. And I still receive messages despite me telling them, I do not do business with you. I have never done business with you, and I demand you delete my information. They won't do it. And it really pisses me off because I have nothing to do with this company, but because company A I did contracting work for handed over my data to this other third party who handed it over to some other third party, and I had no involvement, nor did I give any consent to any of that crap. Now I have some slimy company I want nothing to do with constantly sending me emails and crap. It pisses me off to no extreme. This is the type of stuff that happens. So these are employees that are just employees for a company. The employee outsources it through some union or whatever else to this third-party employee. And as records have shown, as research has shown, the further the company gets down the contracted to contracted group, the worse their security tends to be. And these guys had data leaked and they didn't even know it for months. It wasn't until I think 6 or 8 months later before anybody actually received any notification that all this information was stolen. And it is a ton of information. They said names, birth dates, social security numbers, email addresses, mailing addresses, phone numbers, eligibility data, and insurance identification information was stolen. They're like, don't worry, they didn't gain access to our financial information. Dude, the financial information is the easiest of all of that to change. If you say, hey, we're going to steal all of this crap or your credit card number, dude, steal the credit card number. 9 times out of 10, my bank's going to shut it off before you use it. I can refute the transaction if you do happen to use it. They wipe the card, erase it instantly, and issue me a new one. Please steal my credit card number before you're stealing everything else. Because everything else, now what they're going to do, well, we're going to give you 2 years of credit monitoring service. The most useless product that mankind has ever come up with. I may as well just buy a whole bunch of toilet paper and run it right on into the toilet without wiping it across the crevice before anything else. Okay, that is so much of a waste this crap is. This is insane. And these companies need to be held liable. And we need to stop having companies collecting our data and then outsourcing something else to something else. We should have this like one-party doctrine. You may not subcontract out to one more company. Any more than that, too much. We're done. That's the type of stuff that's happening. And then here's the other lesson we need to do. We need to keep everything off the internet that doesn't have a business on the internet. Okay, this stuff doesn't need to be on some internet-connected systems for some hacker to get in because you've hired the cheapest person to manage your stuff so you can extract as much money as you can with a product that seems to work on the surface. That's exactly what's going on here. All right, enough of this. Let's move on to fake antivirus websites. So, of course, people get scared with antivirus. So you gotta go check the malware. Make sure this is it. Well, this is actually a variation of the domain squatting. That now they are domain squatting antivirus websites and then promoting them. So you're like, oh, I need to do a search. My computer did something funny. Let's go search for an antivirus. And you click on an antivirus website, which distributes a package to you that is actually malware. Great. So threat actors using fake antivirus sites, masquerading as legitimate providers from Avast, Bitdefender, and Malwarebytes to distribute malware. So they do as avast-securedownload.com, bitdefender-app.com, malwarebytes.pro. Those are all fake. Don't go to those sites. You land on those sites and you have a site that looks somewhat authentic. It has a download link. You download the application. So the first example gives us avast.apk. So that would be an Android one. You have the other one gives you a setup-win-x86-x64.exe.zip. That sounds sus. And then we have mbsetup.rar. That sounds super sus. So you just got to be careful about these. The mbsetup.rar was the Steal C information. The one for Bitdefender is the Luma, and the Avast. Which one's this one? This requests intrusive permissions, reading SMS messages, call logs, installing and deleting apps, taking screenshots, checking location, and mining cryptocurrency. So, hey, it says, would you like us to install this spyware on your phone? Sounds exciting. So, there you have it, guys. Be careful if you're going to a website for one of these things. Make sure it's legit. And finally, if you get a lot of those fun scam emails, and it's hard to tell sometimes if they're scams or not, like, hey, sign up for protection plans or things like that. There's research has been collected on these guys, and Best Buy and Geek Squad were the most impersonating companies. And I have to stop and think. I've actually received several Best Buy/Geek Squad impersonation emails over the last year or so. Now, they were not the most profitable. The Windows scams were still the most profitable. Best Buy, I think, was number 4 or 5 on the list. I don't know. We'll get down here in the article. So, of course, this is, you'll get an email proposing to be from one of them and, click here to verify or whatever else they're doing. So that's actually what's going on. So the top 3, Amazon, 34,000, PayPal, 10,000. And from 10 most impersonating companies alone, 132,000 impersonation scams were noted. Best Buy had 52,000. And it amounted to $15 million in losses. So the scammers had gained $15 million. Now, they did say that was not as high. Microsoft had $60 million in losses related to people pretending to be Microsoft, but having significantly fewer recorded instances, only 7,000 instances. So I can almost attribute this to more people fell for it than didn't fall for it, and that's why they probably have fewer instances but made more money. That seems logical to me. Difference is more considerable when looking at it. $288 for the Best Buy Geek Squad versus $8,500 for Microsoft. So the scammers are more likely to be spoofing Microsoft. It seems a little bit more profitable. So very fascinating. Just be aware of that as you're looking at various things. Well, if you want to help support the channel, we do have affiliates. Today we're highlighting DigitalOcean. I use this for web servers, and our Jitsi is on DigitalOcean and a few other different servers and things. TLM.li/DOH. Just like, don't! Only this is DigitalOcean hosting. You can do Minecraft servers, web hosting stuff. You can do Nextcloud instance. All sorts of fun stuff can be done over here on DigitalOcean. TLM.li/DOH. You're going to get $200 in credit, good for 60 days. And that will help support our channel. We will get $25 in credit towards our account each time you are start spending money on a DigitalOcean account, on a new one. So with that, guys, let's have a look over at business news next. First up in business news, Spotify is going to refund the car thing purchases after all. They had originally come out and said, we're not refunding anything. And, guys like Louis Rossmann and probably a few other people came out and say, well, that's really stupid. And Rossmann had a really brilliant idea. Rather than figuring out how to properly dispose of the thing, he gave the corporate address for Spotify and just told everybody, go ahead and send your car things back to them. And, if they get a pallet of old car things that they have to figure out how to dispose of, they might get the message. They were pretty hardcore early on. They are not going to refund anything. So, of course, car thing was if you didn't want to have Spotify directly on your phone for whatever reason, you had this little device that can connect to your car by either an aux port or Bluetooth. It would just connect to the car vents. But apparently it wasn't profitable enough for them. They started selling it for $100, then they cut the price down to $50 when people weren't buying them. And then eventually they said, well, screw this. And they decided to stop manufacturing them, stop selling them. And eventually they said, well, December 9th, they're just going to stop working. And people are like, well, we just paid a bunch of money for this thing. We would like our money back. Like, no, you'll have to figure out how to dispose of this thing yourself. It's a complete brick now. So that's how they were doing that for a while. They received so much pushback. They finally said that they are going to give you a full refund if you still have your valid receipt. So if you've thrown away your valid receipt, sorry, you're not going to get the refund. They're just creating a bunch of e-waste, in which case, yes, you still need to pack it up and send it to their corporate headquarters. But if you do still have your receipt, you can send that along with your car thing back to them and they will issue you a refund. They say it has quietly begun offering refunds for its soon-to-be bricked car thing. So they're not making it a huge announcement about it. So it's up to the rest of us to inform the world. But people are actually getting a response back from customer service when they send when they email an invoice that say they can get their money back for the device. Now, they did say that several people have already tried to get their money back and have been rejected. So if you have tried it and have already been rejected, you might want to try again. It says they've taken some heat over the announcement that last week they will brick the car things on December 9th. It has described the decision as part of the ongoing efforts to streamline our product offerings. And so they basically sold everybody a bunch of things, which you can still buy most likely. And now they will be complete bricks. Maybe, hey, open source the code. Somebody will want to tinker and do something funky with it. But, if you don't want to do that, issue an update to open the thing up. Allow people to have fun with it. We'll find something to do with it, right? Maybe I can turn this into an MP3 player or something like that. I might have to open the thing up and solder on an SD card chip or something, but who knows, right? So anyway, they are going to push this back. And this is why we said earlier in the show, you need to do a little bit of pushback. Pushback can be a good thing. It's not all just negative complaining, because sometimes it just takes a whole bunch of us in the community to say something. And people might go, maybe this isn't as popular as we thought it might be. Same thing, look at what's going on with Windows recall. If enough of us talk about it, maybe, just maybe, they will open up a couple of brain cells. The brain cells will hug and they'll go, maybe people don't actually want this. And maybe you just make it some package you can install, but it's not installed by default. I don't know. So there is legitimate reasons to push back, but if you cannot get your refund on your car thing, don't bother looking up exactly how to dispose of e-waste. Just put it in a package and ship it to their corporate office, which is somewhere in New York. We have the world's first bioprocessor. It uses 16 human brain organoids for 1 million times less power consumption than a digital chip. This is good for all the people wanting to get involved into AI without having to worry about destroying the climate at the same time, because everyone's like, computers and technology. The problem is the amount of energy these things use, and everyone's turning this stuff on. They say down here, Final Spark claims that training a single large language model like ChatGPT-3 required 10 gigawatt hours, 1.21 gigawatts, Marty, 10 gigawatt hours, about 6,000 times greater than the energy consumption of an average European citizen in a whole year. Think of that much power just to train a single language model. So we're talking about massive amounts of data. And by the way, Lake Mead is not going down because the climate is changing. It's going down because of all of the data centers pulling millions of gallons of water out of the nearby river resources to cool data centers for Google and Microsoft. You can look it up. Lake Mead is draining not because of climate change. It is draining because of data centers pulling water out to cool their data systems. You can look it up. All right. But in this case here, they're working with bioengineered stuff. And so with bio stuff, what they're doing is they're creating 4 cells, and each cell contains effectively 4 tissue cultures. So this is fairly complicated stuff. I did a lot of tissue culture in grad school. It's fairly complicated. You have a membrane cell dish, and then you would transplant the cells, and it grows across a 2D grid. And these ones, what they're doing is they're doing a 3D grid growing the cells. And so the organoids are 3D cell masses of brain tissue, and utilizing these and syncing them together with a series of hardware. So this is called wetware. So they use a combination of hardware, software, and biological tissues, and they're able to get all of these things processing with way significantly less energy than a digital chip takes. Now, each one of these organoids lives about 100 days. So there is a little bit of renewal that always has to go on, which makes sense. We could get our typical Hep G2 cells. We could make them last, 2 or 3 days most before we had to split the cells and do things like that. But it's very interesting to see some of these, and I just love that part of their process here involves some Raspberry Pis. That's kind of fun. And on to our last one. Hell is officially frozen over because I have to agree with Kathy Hochul on something. Okay, guys, you do not know how difficult that is for me to say, but I have to agree with Crazy Kathy. I mean, just look at those eyes, by the way. And this is Guardian. This is like a positive spin for her. And she still looks like a demon. Look at this. So of course, New York is trying to pass the 2 bills we talked about, I think last week or the week before, the SAFE Act, and I forget the name of the other one. And the big problem I have with these 2 bills is they're both age-gated bills. The problem with age-gated bills is it means that the social media companies now have to check and know what everybody's age is. And this gives them a backdoor to say, we kind of need to see your ID to see how old you are. Otherwise, you're just going to be under 18 by default, which, frankly, if they did the SAFE Act without the age factor, it would be perfectly fine. The SAFE Act just says you're not allowed to use algorithms because the algorithms are what produces the addictive things. You're supposed to have friends, you connect to the friends, and you can see a chronological list of the things your friends put out. I want social media companies to have this as, if not the default, at least an option that I should be able to go in and turn off the algorithm. Because I don't care what you think I want to see. I want to see what people I have signed up to see want me to see. And that's really what the difference is. The other one dealt with utilizing data and collection. I forgot the name of that one. Utilizing data and collection for targeted marketing and things like that. Again, if you're under 18. Once again, great laws if you take out the age gating part, because that gives them the back door to say, hey, we need to see your valid ID. No, Facebook, you're not getting my valid ID. So what is she doing now? Well, she's passing a bill to ban smartphones in schools. I concur. I agree. There's a few situations where you might need it, medical situations where the app may be the best or only way to manage some health device, maybe, if there's not another way to do that. But, understand they're not banning phones in school, because one of their big points as they were talking to parents is parents really want to know, they really want to know what is, they want to have a way to contact their kids. And so the school is not banning phones in general. They're banning smartphones. So kids can have flip phones. Now, on the positive end, what this would do is it would probably force more kids to not have a smartphone, to have a dumb phone, a flip phone, which means kids will not have as ready access to the internet. And I think really good things would happen with this. On the downside of this, it also means that people will not have the ability to record their crazy, psychopathic, and downright P-wordish teachers when they're doing crazy stuff in school. Because the number of things that we have seen teachers doing in schools that have been completely inappropriate, most of those in the modern era, is captured on cell phones by students. And so this is a really hit and miss, but I do think that every school that has banned phones in general has had a massive increase in student success across every single marker. And so in principle, it's a good idea. Now, maybe we need to realize all this and have other options. Like, here is a good option for this, okay? What if we had every classroom has a camera feed that, now, do we do it locally and then the parent can get into it? Do we do it something the parent can access via the internet? I think via the internet's dangerous. I think a local webcam in each classroom would probably solve a lot of the issues, provided the parents via some form of VPN can access their students' classrooms to see what's going on in the classrooms. That would solve the problem, and it would bring accountability back in the education system. And then, of course, you keep the kids without the smartphones. And then it basically, then the phone simply becomes easy communication, but it's not that easy. It's not easy enough that they're not going to be, texting their friend all day in school, but it's easy enough to contact outside a parent if something is going crazy or wonky. So I can see both sides of this, but in general, I agree that if it's a public school and the government says, yeah, you can't have a smartphone in the public school because we believe it interferes with the education of the students, I actually have to agree with this one, and I can't believe I had to agree with this creature. But I did. I had to, because I think that the benefits of this outweighs the negatives. We do need to figure out a way to keep teachers accountable if the students can no longer record the teachers in class. That's definitely a factor that we have to think about. All right, with that, though, guys, let's have a look over at your favorite place and mine. Let's have a trip to SillyVille. Now, of course, what our modern technology allows us to do is do all sorts of things like zoom on into your court appearance from anywhere, including driving in a car, even if you're driving on a suspended license and calling into court about your case about a suspended license. Well, that's what happened here. So the guy comes in here.
Are you driving?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Ashley, I'm pulling until.
Okay, so here's the court case. And he is actually zooming into the court case to talk about his suspended license. Of course, you can see he's the guy on the bottom.
Are you driving? Ashley, I'm pulling into my doctor's office, actually. So just give me 1 second. I'm parking right now.
Okay, so he's zooming into his court appearance about his suspended license, and he's driving clearly on his suspended license. Now, as more information came out, it's not quite as wow, this guy has no disregard for the law at all as it almost sounds on the surface. So let me tell you the information that has come out about this since this time. So number one, the guy actually, his wife had a medical emergency. So I don't care if you have your license or not. As long as you know how to drive and you have somebody that needs some medical attention, yes, get them to medical attention. Okay, so that's why he was driving at this time. He was actively seeking medical attention. So that being said, the reason he had a suspended license is over a decade ago, he was behind on child support, and being behind on child support, he had his license suspended. Several years later, he got all of the child support completely caught up. The problem is the court doesn't automatically unsuspend your license. He had to go to the state and get his license unsuspended with documentation from the other court that he actually had his fulfilled all the requirements and was able to get his license back. But nobody told him he needed to do that, so he didn't do that. So he gets a suspended license, and then he presumably gets a ticket or something. So now he has a court case for driving on a suspended license. So he zooms into his court driving with a suspended license. So it is still comical that all this can happen, but it was a series of circumstances that it's not a guy that just has reckless abandon for the law. He's not some New York criminal. He's just a dude that's trying to take care of important things in life. And he just didn't know that he needed to go back to the state with verification from the other court to get his license back. So, but there you have it, guys. We have a situation where the judge is like, what's going on? And this dude's like, hold on, I'm getting ready to park. We're here to talk about our suspended license, yo. All right, well, Denver defunded the police, so now they're going to use drones for their 911 response. 911, I'm getting robbed. Let me send the drone out. Does the drone have a mounted submachine gun? No, it has a camera. Well, send a police officer out. Now, they did say that they are going to be sending out police officers when they know a police officer needs to be sent out. But for the most part, most of the cases that isn't like perceived by the 911 operator to would want to send a police, they will deploy a drone to look at the scene. We're talking about stuff that's going on outside, things like that. They're going to send a drone to look at it, and then the 911 dispatcher will determine at that point in time if they want to reroute a police officer to it. Still exceptionally slow. Of course, you might want to know, why are they defunding their things? Well, Denver praises itself on being a sanctuary city, and they cut $41 million of their budget, including $12 million from law enforcement, in order to pay for the city's migrant crisis. So it sounds like if federal laws were actually enforced and the border were actually closed, they wouldn't actually have to cut $41 million from their budget, and they can keep $12 million for law enforcement, because I would rather have $12 million more going to the local law enforcement than have to cut $41 million to deal with a bunch of people who shouldn't be here anyway. So that's kind of an interesting circumstance here. But yes, drones. Hey, at least they're doing better than Pittsburgh. They're still answering the phones when you call 911, whereas Pittsburgh says, don't bother calling. We don't have anybody on duty right now. So there's always that. And finally, Google promised a better search experience, but it's telling us to put glue on our pizza. So I want to hear in the comments from you guys now in the chat live, and let me know in the comments for the edited video later. Is glue a better or worse topping than pineapple for pizza? You know, we have this debate. We have this debate on the internet. Some people are like, pineapple is a legitimate pizza topping. Other people are saying pineapple plus pizza equals blasphemy. Now, would you rather you have two options for your topping, glue or pineapple? Which do you go with? Let me know in the comments. So, of course, this is dealing with AI nonsense. And, of course, the AI is going around the internet and it's scouring things. And the problem is the AI, unlike a human, cannot tell what is a joke and what is not. And it doesn't know what is good information and what is bad information. And we have to remember, the entire internet is about 5 serious people and 6 billion trolls. Okay? There's like 5 serious people on the internet. We know that, right? Every other billion people on the internet are a bunch of trolls doing whatever they can to stir up all sorts of crazy nonsense. And so AI can't tell the difference between who's serious and who's a troll. So the cheese is falling off. What do? You turn to Google, and Google actually said in its response, add some glue. Mix about 1/8 cup of Elmer's glue in the sauce. Non-toxic glue will work. Well, I hope we're not adding toxic glue to the pizza. At least the non-toxic won't kill me. So this is what AI is going to do, guys. AI is going to, I think what it's really going to do is drive us towards idiocracy. We were already moving fast towards idiocracy. Pretty soon, we are going to see, when's the first time we're actually going to see the case where you have a home recliner that itself is also a toilet that you can sit there and chuckle at as you don't have to get up to use the bathroom to watch the foulest television programs ever. That is the world we're coming to, guys. If you've not seen Idiocracy, it is America's future, and I think AI is intensifying it. Of course, AI could also destroy us, enslave us, or imprison us. So take your pick. Which society would you prefer? They've given us some other fascinating things. This one of the many mistakes cropping up in the feature that Google rolled out broadly. It claims the former U.S. President James Madison graduated from the University of Wisconsin not once but 21 times. A dog has played in the NBA, NFL, and the NSH, and that Batman is a cop. All right. Megan Farnsworth, the person that is the spokesperson, so you know they're lying because their mouth are moving there. So the mistakes came generally very uncommon queries that aren't representative of most people's experiences. Sure. Isolated examples continue to refine the product. Google didn't promise it'd be perfect. It even slaps generative AI as an experimental label at the bottom of the AI answers. The problem we have is that Google's webpage right now is actually deprioritizing search and giving everybody AI by default, which is seriously problematic. So don't tell me it's all experimental and then give us that as your primary response. So take Google's I/O launch feature. The demo was highly controlled, yet it delivered questionable answers. How to fix a jammed film camera. It suggested opening the back door and gently removing the film. Of course, that was going to destroy your photos, by the way. So don't do that. It's not just Google. OpenAI, Meta, and Perplexity have all grappled with the hallucinations. Google, however, is first to deploy the technology on a large scale, and so the things just keep on coming back more and more. So there you have it, guys. Let me know in the comments, what is a better topping for pizza, glue or pineapple? With that, guys, if you want to help support the channel, we do have a Patreon page. You can jump on over to Patreon. We also have Subscribestar and Locals as well. Of course, over there, you can get access to our short stories. Our next one should be coming this week. It is finally done. And I just need to do the audiobook next. I'm going to target getting that done Monday or Tuesday this week. So stay tuned for a new rollout of a new science fiction story. So you can get those, and you can get the links to participate in the calls on Thursdays as well over there. With that, thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.